Nancy Pelosi has just said something that should be condemned. This is a question of patriots versus fascists. It's that simple. Experiential question is one that comes up just by virtue of the way we go about our politics and what our politics, to some degree, almost demands. Nancy Pelosi has basically said we need to blow off the debates. Now, it started to trend on Twitter, and I would imagine it got plenty of Democrats' hearts aflutter. Why does Joe Biden need to debate him at all, right? Now, again, this is a question of patriots versus fascists. The patriots in this immediately see, whoa, that's problematic. Whether you're Democrat, Republican, left, right, libertarian, anywhere between. The catch here is that the people who have some notion of America, whatever that means, I do. I know a lot of people like to say you're taking the piss out of America. Yeah, because I have an idea of what the country could be. And for whatever virtue that remains, this is one of those questions, right? Let's be clear, none of it is real. Just honest. All of these things are conceptual environments, meaning they can be manipulated pretty quickly in the way that they operate, which gives that much more urgency to the condemnation of what Nancy Pelosi is saying. I don't believe that what she's saying is going to end up in that taking place, but the very fact that a person in her political stature, she is leader of the House, third person to be president, that would casually say that is problematic. How do you tell me, 320 million people, give or take, to be under one banner? Meaning, how do you get those people to basically end up under some level of alignment? The different states, but ultimately under the country of the United States. After all, if something happens in Texas, I don't like Texas that much, despite my ex and my wife, oddly enough, coming from the same place. But if anything happened in Texas, I would say all powers at the disposal of the United States should go to ensure that that country is okay, despite the fact that that country fucks America over and over and over again. It's its choice. Whether I think that choice is right or wrong, it's its choice. I may think they're propagandized too. I may think they're not necessarily doing what is in their best interest, but they may be voting for things that I just fundamentally just misunderstand. And so I have to kind of give them deference to that Republican vote every 4 years. Is what it is, right? Doesn't matter if anything happened in Texas. Why? Because as I grew up, as I, became a man, everything that I have been exposed to has told me that Texas is part of the Union. It is part of the United States. And as part of the United States, all of us, to some degree, are pitching in for some particular ends, whatever that end is. But at the end of the day, it's still under the banner of America, the United States. I don't know what's on the other side of the nation state thing. And so I have a certain deference to maintaining this notion of, to some degree, a nation state, even though I may want to modify and change what that is. I make it the point that if you are in politics and you're doing things, what are you doing it for? Are you doing it in order to get things accomplished? But then the question becomes, how much do you want to win? It's an adversarial process. And in that being an adversarial process, like any other adversarial process, escalates. However, the escalation is supposed to be contained by this notion that you're still under the guise of America. And the things that you're doing are in the best interests of America. You're almost philosophically bound by that. The very act of you being in office under this notion of a constitution, to some degree, demands that. The Constitution is not real. The politics, the competition, the ability to want to win is. In which case, it escalates. Newt Gingrich gets into the well of Congress, start bitching, moaning, mean-spirited politics. Escalates. The Republican Party says, yeah, fuck it. We're not going to give Obama that Supreme Court seat. Democrats impeach the next president. What did they impeach him on? Something that the next guy who they want to come in pretty much did the same thing. It escalates. The question becomes, where does it end? And does it end at the point where one party just says, I don't give a shit about the country. I just want to win. It is imperative. Everything else is subordinate, including the philosophical thing to which I supposedly ascribe my values to and fight for. That's problematic to me. And whether you're a Democrat, Republican, Independent, whatever, that should be problematic to you. The argument that she's making is rational from the standpoint of wanting to win. It's not rational from the standpoint of believing that you are still, despite the fact that you want to win, you wanting to win is subordinate to you being part of America. And therein lies the problem. If you're going to get to the point of saying, we think we have this as a lock, so I don't even need to talk to the other president. Now, I take that as you don't want Joe Biden to be eaten alive in that debate. And you understand, just like I understand, that the only way Joe Biden is going to fuck up at this point is if he fails in those debates. Now, it's possible that something changes economically, but it will get worse, which will make Trump's chances worse. But if you get into the standpoint of debate and Trump wins those debates, then it puts the question whether or not Joe Biden can last and that strategy to just coast works. Nancy Pelosi knows that. I know that. And so what did she say? Fuck those debates. Why are you going to debate them? Why take the chance? Your strategy has been to literally coast from day one, whether it was in the primary or whether it's now that you're going against Trump. And every attack that Trump uses, you blunt it by doing something to negate it. This guy's Bernie Sanders, and then you have Republicans trot out on stage. You're going to have vampires in the streets eating babies. He picks Kamala Harris. And in picking Kamala Harris, basically picks a criminal justice, law and order ticket. It's a negation. It's not trying to go beyond that. It's trying to make the point that what Trump is saying is not true. And because it's not true, the audience, the public, basically agrees to some degree that it's not true because it's so ludicrous. He's not running against Bernie Sanders, despite the fact that that's how it is. If my name is Joe Biden, why do I need to negate that? I am Joe Biden. You know I'm not Bernie Sanders. It makes it look ridiculous. And so it makes it hard for Trump to lay a hand on Biden. And because of that, Biden coasts. I'm in my basement, dog. I come out every so often to give a statement when I need to, when somebody's bitching at me like Don Lemon. But under normal circumstances, coast. Hands off. Drowning man, my opponent, let him drown. But what about the debates? That's Trump's chance. That's Trump's opportunity to lay a hand on Joe Biden. And it would probably be funny, whimsical, at times fully ludicrous, and yet that's the guy America chose. That's their champion. That's their standard bearer. And the Republican Party is entirely almost aligned with him, which means you kicking progressives and trying to lift up the skirt of some Republicans is going to be a folly, just like it was in 2016. You give them the debate because America chose them. That's why. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. If you guys dig this content, please like, share, and subscribe. You can always support this content through PayPal or Patreon. Oddly enough, I think I said everything that I wanted to say in the opening. How weird that happens. But let's hear Pelosi say it herself. I want her to look into the camera and tell the public, a woman who probably hasn't had a debate in decades, that the president of the United States, a person who was chosen by the American population, should in no way get a debate with the Democratic challenger, person who has not been chosen by anybody.
I myself, just don't tell anybody I told you this, especially don't tell Joe Biden. I don't think that there should be any debates. I do not think that the President of the United States has comported himself in a way that anybody should, and that has any association with truth, evidence, data, and facts. I wouldn't.
I'm sorry, just to interrupt this for the moment. Joe Biden, the man she's basically saying, look, this paragon of virtue should not in any way associate himself with a president that has lied so flagrantly. Donald Trump is a flagrant fucking liar, yes. I hope people at this point fully understand that. I hope his supporters who thought he was going to fight the deep state and all this other nonsense is a creature of that state in the way that he has appropriated resources and given tons of money to them. Whatever you want to consider the deep state, I guarantee you it's probably the main thing is that, which is basically what he did in that office. Now, you take that how you take that. You may think Democrats are monsters or horrible or at the very least deceitful liars. I would agree with you with the deceitful liars part. And from a foreign policy standpoint, yeah, agreed. even from the poverty standpoint and the violence that impacts on the communities, with them pulling the African American vote, with this dog whistle of sorts, as if they're going to do something on that issue specifically. They're not. Not even with the police stuff, despite the fact that Joe Biden was staying there with George Floyd. I'm saying they are lying to you, just very subjectively. Here's the catch. Joe Biden got on stage and looked a black person in the face and said, I, Joe Biden, white man Joe Biden, king of African Americans though, white savior, was trying to liberate you in getting rid of those theaters and the segregation. The truth of it is, in the 80s, Joe Biden came out and said, I lied about that. I was not, liberating movie theaters. And yet, he would still do it today. Was Joe Biden really with Mandela? Was he? Did he? No, it didn't happen. He is a flagrant liar. He does it on a whim. Doesn't stop him 1 iota. I was in school. I did X, Y, Z. No, you didn't. You were at the last of your class. I mean, you can point one lie out after the next with Joe Biden. Are you really making this argument that the flagrant liar Joe Biden, who lied about cuts to Social Security, who lied about the criminal justice stuff, cuts to Social Security and the cuts to Medicare and the balanced budget stuff, lied flagrantly about it. So much so, tumbled in the polls in Iowa afterwards. And you're telling me that you can't debate Trump? Because if that was the case, Sanders should have never debated Joe Biden, because he is a flagrant liar also. Let's keep this going. For fuck's sake. My mom said, she said, I never want you to be a politician. And her reasoning lies here, that I never fully grasped until I started doing this job. Let's keep going.
I wouldn't legitimize a conversation with him, nor a debate in terms of the presidency of the United States. I myself...
That's an astonishing statement. Now, look, this is a question, exponential, cosmic even. Fascists and Democrats, or fascists and patriots. And the reason I say that is because this is not subjective. You live under a body of law. And yes, I often said it's not real, but in the environment to which they work, the game space, if I am playing chess, that bishop is going to go in that particular direction. If she is in a political space of House of Representatives, top person, she needs to also abide under the idea, to some degree, of America, even though none of them do. If you look at the convention, what happened? You have 30 fucking million people, more than that, without health care. And with 88% of Democrats saying, this is what we want, they all tell you to go fuck yourself. So let's just be very clear. This is in the middle of a pandemic with 12 million people that lost their health care over the course of this last few months, because all of those people had health care connected to their jobs, and they lost it when they lost their jobs. The numbers are only going to go up, by the way, because the loans aren't coming out anymore. The stimulus is not coming out anymore. That means those companies are going to close. Number is going to go higher. Death toll, 300,000 by the end of the year. Evictions, tens of millions by the end of the year. And they give a beauty pageant that the only thing they can talk about is going after Trump. Yeah, fuck her and fuck that party. And I'm making the point that in the same way she's sitting here making this argument that you shouldn't dignify them with an argument. What about you? We're stuck with you, which is the problem. You have a two-party system, and one party has just said, fuck the debates. What does that mean? The American public chose the president of the United States. It's one thing if neither person was president. Okay, fair enough. You can, bitch at that. Fair enough. American public chose Donald Trump to be their president over Hillary Clinton, the most establishment person in the history of the universe. And she lost. That public thought that Donald Trump, on the day that he won the election, 60%, not viable or fit to do the job. Think about that. Your public was so bothered by the fact that they had to run against Hillary Clinton and that they did not want her, explicitly so, coming after Obama, that 20 and 30% of people, whites, jump ship. You have to deal with that. But you never did. You screamed Trump and Russia. I'm making the point that your party has gotten so detached from the interests of the public that the only thing you can argue about is shit that the public almost doesn't particularly care about, or at the very least, only Democrats. You've lost the thread. I mean, even this nonsense, all of this theater around, surrounded by a fucking fire. Like, why doesn't that aggravate more people? This is the thing that bothers me about lefty networks. And honestly, Democrats are fucking hypocrites. And on top of that, what you should be doing right now is screaming at the height of your lungs that you get our vote when you represent America's interests. America has said 70%. Fuck, man, this is a pandemic. That's dangerous. We need health care. And to the tune of millions will have medical bills that will be related to the fact that they had COVID-19 and could not recover from those symptoms fast. And everything else that comes with that is a bill. Thanks for the test. What do I do now that I'm positive? It's an utter betrayal that they are not representing Medicare for all. And if you have 88% of Democrats backing that policy, what does that mean about any notion of representative government? I can show you what the American public wants in general. They don't represent any of it, despite being the left-leaning party in this country. And every fucking lefty network out there, some attached to the Democratic Party, others not, will get out and say, gotta back Joe Biden. How cowardly. How do you get Medicare for all with 88% support and 70% public support? First time in your life. You've never seen that. It went through the fires of a debate to drag itself over one dead body, dead Democrat after the next, in order to come to that particular stature and raise that shit up in the ground and in there. We won. We got this. Fucking won this policy argument. And with 88% Democratic support and 70% public support, you take this cowardly, squirmy position, anti-politics position, that you should acquiesce and vote him. Even when they are out there sniffing the tail of one Republican after the next to fucking replace you. What are your political options here? And do you have none? And why are you so cowardly in this particular political position when you get 88% support and 70% public support? What you should be doing is stepping out the party and say, yeah, fuck this. Just like all of those people calling for a general strike. Fuck this. Lefties, turn on the worm. We're done. Progressive Democrats, the battered spouse of the political spectrum. We're done. And you say, I am holding on to Medicare for all like it is grim death. I am going to die on the fucking flag for this policy. And if you, the Democratic Party, are so fervently purists that you're willing to tank it to a man who you're calling the fucking apocalypse, that she doesn't even want debated because he's so horrendous, then what does it mean about the Democratic Party? And what does that mean for representative government, that a party is willing to do that, to not acquiesce to a position that the overwhelming majority of the American public holds and nearly unanimous support within the context of the party? How do you give that up? Meaning from the standpoint of the left, as a fight, as an argument, as a place to which you stick your flag and you say, I'm going to die here, or we're going to succeed. And you put a demand to the party and let them answer that. And if they're so willing to tank it to Donald Trump, then they need to explain that. That's fucking phenomenal. A representative government and supposedly a Democratic Party is not willing to acquiesce to a party that millions, majority, easy majority, clear majority supports. Representative government at that point is dead. And if Trump wins, then he wins. Your party at that point would have made a choice that dealing with healthcare in the midst of a pandemic was something that was not a priority enough when they ran, and that they were going to hold the country hostage on a policy that the majority of the country supported. They need to explain that. And you should not be so weak as to make that particular argument, because what I just said, everything is true. Like, share, and subscribe. And I think there are people here. I'm annoyed by this. You have no idea how much I'm annoyed by this. I know people often say, it sounds like you're taking the piss out of America. I am. Just like I would have this introspective taking the piss out of myself when I fuck up. This country could be something different. This world could be something different. And we're stuck with two political parties that know that both of them can fuck up because they're the only ones there. And that they don't necessarily have to attach themselves to America. They just have to be least worse in some aspect to which they can get a constituency. It's not a representative government anymore. That's my point. Your parties have been captured by corporate interests. You no longer have a democracy. Democracy is dead. Sanders was there for the Duopolitan Convention. Yes, he was. The Democratic Convention, yes. Yes, Bob. Yeah, kick me in the balls. I get it. I love your short discussion on quantum mechanics and a double-slit experiment this morning. Thank you. Phone lines. Keep it up. Thank you. I appreciate that. Look, Shane and I are fanatics for that stuff. And honestly, the hardest thing is to get us to not do that. It's because it's easy. It's so subjective. Like it gets into this thing of existence, right? Like we think wrongly that what happens outside of us is detached from us in some way. And I don't mean just in mechanical ways in which you can kind of pick up a pencil, pick up a pen. No, the reality of it is there's something weirder going on. At least again, from our perspective, we understand to the degree that our senses allow us to understand, or the machines that we can build to get it. But we believe that this stuff is physical matter reality. What we know is that it is not. And depending upon how you are observing that stuff determines, to some degree, outcome. It's bizarre, right? But existence in and of itself is bizarre. And despite all of the things and the measures that we take as human beings to try to get our grasp on that stuff and to try to make us feel comfortable that, okay, our world is stable. It's not entirely true. Like your life, the dramas of your life, those things aren't necessarily real. Those are conceptual spaces. The reality of it is you're a person on a planet flying through space. And I would even make the argument, we don't even know for sure if the physical creates the mental or the other way around. That stuff is fascinating to Shane and I. And so we fall into those conversations easy. Oh, thank you, Maggie Arbrook. Don't tase me, bro. Right now, don't tase me, bro. Look, man, I agree with you. I agree with you. It took years coming, Bob, but I agree with you. I don't know if he is a sheepdog. I don't know if he just doesn't want to be considered Ralph Nader. I don't know if it was in the bricks from the beginning where it was like, okay, I'll just take the knee. I don't know what it was. I don't know if he was tired. I mean, we are talking about nearly octogenarian. But he fell down. And he fell down in a way that was problematic to me. I mean, look, I get it, man. You try to run a race. You're a person. And you say, I am looking for a political revolution. And you take on the speeches, you take on the schedule, you take on all that shit. And you take on the hopes of tens, millions of people. And the arguments in some cases weren't made because he didn't want to make them. He didn't want to call a lie a lie. And on top of that, the moment that he fell to the ground, any notion of protest was out the window. Meaning, you take your majority and you say, you get our vote when you support our interests. That wasn't done. There was no negotiation in this case. He had a task force that didn't mean anything. So yeah, it was problematic, to put it mildly. I'm the progressive soapbox thought on the People's Convention. I love the People's Convention. Fucking A, Nick Brana. So Nick Brana had me at one of his other conventions early on, and I think I was on one of the panels. Loved it. He brought in Jack Fresco stuff, like phenomenal convention. We're at an inflection point. And the question becomes, do lefties honestly still believe that the Democratic Party is representing their interests? And if so, why? Why do they need to do that? They're chasing tail of Republicans. Why? Because you don't matter. You're irrelevant. You're a captured class. The very fact that they can run a primary where they would call you racist, sexist, bigoted, etc., and then say, okay, bro, it's okay now. It's okay now. It's okay now. It's okay now. Just let it pass. And you accept that. To get cheated in 2016 and accept that. So yeah, you're irrelevant. You're a captured class. You don't matter. You're like the black vote of the Democratic Party. You don't matter. They may give you something performative like, hey, here's this black woman that is going to represent the interests just like Obama did when he was in office. Meaning a nothing. Performative. You're irrelevant. You need to internalize that. You need to internalize the lack of worth that you have to that party entirely. Because you incentivize it. I'm making the point that the People's Party is a gateway. It allows you to step out of the party space. And by the way, even if you still ended up voting for Joe Biden, it is still in your interest to go and support. Why wouldn't it be? It is giving you an opportunity to organize in a way that you can speak in one voice. And until you do that, you don't matter. I hope you understand, even if you're a Democrat and you believe in the Democratic Party and all this other nonsense, it is still imperative that you do that in order to hold your party accountable. And without accountability, nothing matters. You're irrelevant. That is honest to God truth. That, look around, observe your world for the moment. Why would that not be true? Why is it not a rational act for the Democratic Party to take you for granted if indeed they think they can give votes elsewhere and they know you're not going anywhere? It is indeed a rational act. The catch here is that your mind is going to recoil to Donald Trump. He's the monster of my dreams. But you must understand, every 4 years, there's another monster. In another 4 years, there'll be a Ted Cruz, Tom Cotton at some point. Those monsters aren't going anywhere. Those monsters got worse entirely because they could take you for granted and pick on any policy, knowing that regardless of what they do, you will be there as a loyal, believing that you're saving America by letting America basically get torched year after year after year because you was never willing to hold your party accountable. I had to tell you this, all of those races, those Republicans still won. Trump still won. Reagan still won. Bush still won. And in each one of those races, you backed a Democrat that was squirmy and wasn't going to give you anything. Time to change. Grow the fuck up. Grow up here. People's Commission. Yeah, it should be supported. I love it. Michael Williams. The Democrats and the Republicans have rules of acquisition on lock. Greed is eternal. Yeah, that's the other catch. That's why I'd say I don't necessarily think this is going to come to pass from the standpoint of Nancy Pelosi, because they already have their rules of the way they interact with one another. Look, Trump could eat him alive in those debates. They may shoot Joe Biden up with something before those debates to keep him going. And I think Trump asked for a drug test. That's the funniest shit ever. And yet, how's he wrong? How's he wrong? If you think Joe Biden sundowns, that's not irrational, And you say, well, look, I don't want them to dope him up before that. Coffee is okay, but I don't want them to shoot him up with drugs or anything that was going to get him hyped up for this 20 minutes and then he goes home and crashes. No, drug test his ass. As odd as that sounds, as funny as that sounds, even to some degree, just political and overt in this kind of reality show way, there's a reality to it of saying, how can you say Trump is entirely wrong? You can't. You can't. And therein lies the problem of your president, Joe Biden. You understand that basically the assumption here is that Kamala Harris is going to get it because the Democratic Party wanted Kamala Harris to get it anyway. Whether that's arresting her in 4 years where Joe Biden has just broken down on the job, or whether that's her taking it by de facto, where the Democrats kind of worm her in the back, knowing that Biden may not end or get through his presidency. This is the scheming that is taking place here. I mean, for fuck's sake, they had anti-Sanders meeting. Why wouldn't these conversations come up? It's callous, but you're a political figure. You have a job. And a part and parcel to that job is to get elected and direct your politics from the standpoint of your party. It is a rational act to do those things. I'm making the point that it is a rational act from the standpoint of the left to do exactly what I just said prior. Like, share, and subscribe.